Can somebody answer his question or her patient number 2?
Carefully. No.
B-sides?
They don't know how the... I'm sorry.
Can you answer that one?
Yeah, sure. They have no idea how the first life forms formed. They know how amino acids came together, and they have no idea how the very first life forms or living systems came about. They know how the parts came about, but they don't know how the living systems were set up into genomes.
Really good.
Constructed and yeah. How's that for you?
No, that was really good. I didn't mean to bust out in a laugh. I seen this comment and I always laugh at really inappropriate times.
Oh God.
So I'm really
I mean,
sorry.
in one single yeast cell, right, you have 79 billionth interactions. You have 10 to the 79 billionth interactions within one yeast cell, like every second. And they flow down things called virtual protons and stuff like that. And even though they have a massive amount of interactions, there's only a few ways that they can work perfectly together. Right, very, very few ways. So how does that all come together? I mean, people say a simple cell. What's simple? You know what I mean? Okay, they go on about RNA and clay and all that. Well, that's been proven that a lot of it's racemic to begin with, and the stuff that's not racemic is just hype. If you read through there, they cannot give you the science, just like Dr. Tua said while he was debating Dr. Genius, Dave, the Dr. Professor Dave. Yeah. I mean, they are absolute. When he says they're absolutely clueless, he's right. And even the scientists themselves who are in original life research on the evolutionist side, they admit it. They're clueless. They absolutely admit it. And there's been many times where they have. And this is where Dave comes out and has got all these people, like, I'll just go get a block of clay and throw it into the, prebiotic earth and bang, you've got it. But you have to get things from like just base elements. Like, I wish I could go to and read it out to you. To the base elements they have to use on a prebiotic earth. You have to be prebiology. So you've only got certain base chemicals and elements like formaldehyde and blah, 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 and a few other, quite a few other things, but you have to combine them to make the first molecules that can form into other molecules, and you need to, like, if you might have thousands of pools in a dark cave and some outside in the sun. And you need the reactions to start at the right times and stop at exactly the right time. If you don't put the right catalyst in at the right time and then put the right catalyst in to stop it at the right time, then it'll just keep going and destroy everything that you've got. Every single molecule they've created that's worthwhile gets destroyed because it just needs to be started and stopped at the right times. Then they all needed to be added together at the right times. I mean, these are the things that they don't think of. They're completely and utterly clueless. When he says, when James Tua says they're clueless, he is not kidding. They are absolutely clueless. And there's literally hundreds of pages just to put one simple little protein together, or to do one step to try and make these proteins. It takes hundreds and hundreds of pages. And then if you make one mistake, then you go, okay, everything's gone back to zero, so you can refer back to your notes and then start off at that point again. But where are all those papers on the early Earth? Where are all those notes? Where are all those things to do this? They can't even do this in labs with the best minds in the world. And even when they do stuff, what they'll do is they'll create a whole lot of like solution. And in that solution, there'll be less than 1%, or say 1% of the thing that they want, but it'll be racemic. All the proteins they've got in there are racemic, but they're the same protein, but they're racemic, which means that they're opposite of what they need, right? So then they go, okay, we proved that by creating these crappy racemic things that can never be used, but they're the same protein, but the opposite side of what we need. So then they just go and they buy these things, these chemicals that are separated out from natural products, right? Natural, DNA and that, like molecules. And then they put them into these very complicated machines and hook them together. And when they hook them together, like they say, okay, we've created a strand of DNA. No, you didn't. And they say that's proof of evolution, the prebiotic Earth. Where are these machines? Where are these vacuum flasks? Where are these centrifuges that separate things out? Where is all the notes and all of the intelligence on the early Earth to do this? There's nothing under that. He's right. They're complete, and they're lying, and all of these morons are running around. There's a 1 in 40,000 chance. 1 in 10 to the 40,000 chance. Oh, at least that's one chance. You know what I mean? Like, ugh.
Bravo. Well
Yeah,
done there, mate. And I see praise in the background, and then he's gone. He went poof. He was there.
well, he'll be back. Can I just say something about what Jason said?
Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely knows more about this than I do, obviously. But I agree. Like, while they've made some molecules on clay and, say, metal ions, and it's been hypothesized that it could happen that way, I don't think that they've actually ever completed it. And that's what Tor was saying, is that even though there's hypotheses that it could be happening on clay or metal ions, it's never been proven to have done.
Oh, sorry to cut you off, but something that's relevant to what you're saying. Tor also said that in those like headlines, you know, like the beginning of a citation's got a really mad headline, like proof that RNA formed on clay. You know what I mean? And stuff. But that's just all hype, right? It's all hype.
it is.
But when you actually get down into it, someone like Tua can actually follow the chemistry and the science, and he goes, well, they don't know what they're talking about. See, they don't even admit, they don't say this, and they leave that out, and they leave this. So those headlines are just all hype. So when they read, like, the headline and it's the abstract, say, and without looking at the citation and running down all the rabbit holes, they're just wasting their time. Sorry, I was just saying that.
The title actually said functional RNA, but that's not what they had, because the one moderator, I forgot what his title was in science, but I think he's a chemist, but he was saying, like, oh man, I just totally lost my train of thought. That case.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Joe Biden moment, mate. We all have him.
He straight up asked him, he was like, the title says functional RNA, so what function does it have? What function does it perform? You know, and he was just like, I have no idea. Dave was totally at a loss. Here he is with this peer-reviewed article that he supposedly has studied. This is his biggest proof for abiogenesis theory being feasible. And then here he is saying he has no idea what function that this supposed RNA performed. And the truth is, they never did create RNA. It's all hypothetical. It was a hypothetical paper where it's saying that it's possible that it could have formed on this clay. Well, there's other papers that hypothesize it could have happened on metal ions. It's like they got a lot of good ideas for how it could have happened. But, like, again, these are just the base molecules. These aren't even the macromolecules like proteins and RNA that you need. You know, they're just getting the basic amino acids to form, which is basically like saying we can find the bits and pieces of the car engine, but we have no idea how the wind did this, you know. So
Praise, welcome back.
Oh man, it was it was hellish trying to figure out what was going on. So I had to reset cookies, I had to put my passwords in again, and all this other garbage. So I'm just glad I'm back now. I mean, it was crazy, all the stuff I had to do.
And what, like, you had to re-put in your passwords?
Yeah, because I cleaned out the cookies. The cookies had all my passwords in them.
Oh, okay.
I was interested in what C-Science was saying, but anyway.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
There you go,
I
C-Science.
apologize.
How dare you
oh
interrupt?
no, I was basically finished. I mean, we could go on about the topics though if you wanted to summarize some more there.
I actually had a question for you because I know you're a beast at a lot of the science stuff, C-Science. Grayson put out this argument that with the abiogenesis, he says some environment. I'll look it up here. I forget the name of this stupid thing he had there.
Yeah, we could discuss his video if you wanted to waste some time, man.
I will not. I'm just kidding.
We got Jason here, Olive, and Sparrow, and you. We can do it up. Let's talk
Heck
about
yeah,
it.
man. Like, this is like something I would love for you to tackle because I'm not. You know, when it comes to technical things with science, that's where that's for me where I lose. You know, I don't know too much in that, so I'm not really strong in that.
Well, we all learn though, and this is the way we do it.
Yeah,
Right.
true that.
Amen, honey. That was beautifully said. And apparently, amino acids are only in one of your hands or something. I didn't know
Right.
that.
Left hand. The
I
left.
didn't even know that. Centurion said that.
I see. I'm learning.
What is Grayson's channel's name again? Does anyone know?
It's
Wasn't it
base.
like?
Oh,
It's
I'm
base
sure.
theory.
Yeah,
Base
base theory. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
See what my buddy Grayson's up to.
Yeah, he has this video out. So, have you ever heard of the Amyloid world?
No.
Well, we'll go through it. I would like maybe Rob Mad too to come by sometime because, like
Ask him about something he knows. Ask him about like something like on Lucy's pelvis or something like that. There's some new stuff we just discovered.
Oh
So-
yeah, we do have some new discoveries on that. But let's cover. How long is Grayson's video? 18 minutes. All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Grayson first.
I'll put it on fast so we don't have to go through that.
Well, not too fast though. No.
Yeah.
No, just let it play, man. We'll just
Okay.
I don't know. The
All right,
fast thing kind of
good.
screws in my head. He talks
Most of us
fast
are
anyway.
familiar
though,
with
so.
the criteria of life
All right.
learned about in middle school. I'm alive, you're
I
alive,
apologize.
dogs are alive, plants are alive. But it is worth noting that there is some gray
Can you pause it real quick?
area, for example,
real quick,
viruses, which
And there he goes saying it, and that was my other point right here. Is like he wants to explain, and right here he's using viruses as an example of his. And by my definition of a living form, viruses are technically alive, and that's like part of science philosophy right now. We're trying to just like decide if viruses are living or something else, you know. But my definition for life is that it has a genome. So viruses do have a small genome, even though it's.
But they only carry what they need with them at a time, but they need a host to survive.
Right. So they're trying to figure out which came first, is the virus or the people, you know, or the living things.
Right.
They're living too, but they're viruses. Right. So like the new theory is that all of life could have arose from viruses, and that viruses are actually the LUCA, or the first universal common ancestor that they've been searching for. You know? So, and the thing with that is because viruses, they have, they're usually they're portions of either RNA or DNA that have been, they match the DNA or RNA of the host, and that's how they're able to attach. So, but the whole point is that in my definition of a living thing is it needs to have a genome. And the viruses do have a genome, although it's smaller than the rest of the animals that we're like, you know, familiar with, and us. They do have a small genome, so according to my definition, they're alive. But here we have, you know, the fact that it takes all this being compiled perfectly in such an intricate system for something to become a living thing. And even viruses that are alive, according to my definition, they have a small portion of DNA or RNA, and that got set up somehow. Now the discussion is which one came first, because the DNA matches the virus and its host. So they're saying, you know, either the virus came from the host because it matches the host, or the virus came first and then the host came from the virus, and that's why there's DNA from the viruses in the host.
But how did the virus survive without the host?
Exactly.
It's like a chicken before it was chicken or the egg.
Exactly.
Even though the chicken or the egg's been answered, but anyway, you don't get the metaphor.
Yeah, it's a wild time in science right now. Like they're just blowing away the common theories that we've been taught for so long. They're all in jeopardy, especially Big Bang cosmology. But let's go on from there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Unless Jason.
Oh, they are. They are absolutely destroyed on that one. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's just so obvious. There's no. I don't need to go on. All I need to say is this: you have to either believe in the Big
How
Bang,
desperate are
that
these
everything was
people?
created out of nothing, or you have to believe, and this is the one I love the most. I love these people. These are the ones I love the most when they say, I believe the universe was eternal. I said, oh, really? So you believe matter and energy never had a beginning and can never have an end? So that means matter and energy is from everlasting to everlasting, just like the Bible says God is.
Well, I would just push back. This is like, I would take it a step further, Jason. I would say, can they prove anything physical, natural exists at all?
I wouldn't. I'd just say that. And then they've got no comeback. And that's it. And then that's it. They literally have faith. They have to have faith that either nothing created everything out of nothing. And then they say, oh, but quantum energy might have been eternal. And, well, okay, then you're saying there's an energy that's eternal from everlasting to everlasting. So whichever way you do it, you have to have faith. And that's all they need to know, is they run around telling everyone that they're about science and all this sort of stuff, and they're not. They're about faith.
Yeah. Well,
From the
recently,
beginning.
the Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, they debunked that. So in quantum physics, there's this idea that there's particles around us. They have real existence objectively outside of our senses. Like they are, so outside of our conception of reality, these things are real.
You mean like God?
Well, I mean, to them, like physicalists, naturalists, for many years now, for at least for a couple hundreds of years now, they believe that the physical world outside of us was built and composed of physical things that have physical texture, and
yes.
It's called physicalism, basically.
I understand that they're wrong because, and Hawking, and I'll tell you this for 100% fact, Hawking hates those ideas. He hates anything that had an eternal anything, because that implied God as some sort of God or creator or something that's from everlasting to everlasting. And that is why. Yeah, I know.
It gets way worse than that, because recently they found out in quantum mechanics that those particles they think that are material natural, they don't exist outside of our perception. It means that mind is only what exists. Everything around us is just a concept. It's conceptual. It's just a concept in our mind that we built up. Yeah.
No, well, not that we built up, but I mean, like when you look at an atom, there's like, even if you said that quarks had mass, if you removed all the free space from atoms and put that imaginary mass in the quarks, you could fit it into less than a sugar cube from everyone on Earth. You could take all the free space out of every human being on Earth and fit them into less than a sugar cube, and that's only assuming that those quarks have mass. And I believe that it's an electromagnetic pushing and pulling that they're detecting, and that gives the appearance of mass. And they're saying, I believe that atoms are nothing but electromagnetic energy. So if that is correct, then that means we are literally living in a simulation run by the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly. Right. But the point is, like, here's the point though. When nothing is being observed, let's say the moon, when you're not observing it, it doesn't exist. It doesn't have any existence in the quantum world. Like it's just a mathematical probability or hypothetical existence. It needs to be, when we observe it, it comes into existence. So like none of this stuff around us really objectively exists except for us. The only thing that really does exist is us and our minds and how we perceive reality. So like observers actually make things real. And that's how God made the simulation. So it's just like a simulation. You ever think of a computer game? Like whenever, like when the character, the avatar, like would touch something, it renders the background environment. And that's basically, we're living in as pixels, like a pixelated environment where we literally render and re-render reality. So we're the only things that absolutely exist objectively. So physical things just don't exist. What the hell does that even mean? That's just a concept that humans made in their head to like identify something. So it's a construct. It's a mental. Everything is a mental construct around us, and even our minds don't even exist without God's mind making it exist, because it would just be an infinite regress of observers. So it's pretty cool. This is why I think Christians are idealists. They just don't even realize it. But I think we got sidetracked. I would like to go back to Grayson with this stupid abiogenesis. What a joke.
All right. So like I was saying, a virus is a living thing because it has a complete genome. A living thing needs to be fully functional system. So it needs to have all the life processes. It needs to be able to replicate. Okay. So we have that against them. A total and functional genome. It needs a total and functional genome to be alive. And they are far from developing a functional genome. They're looking for life. They are trying to create it. Well, they're far from it if they don't have a genome, and they're not even able to create an RNA strand.
Yeah,
That's all
unless
I gotta say. I'm sorry.
they separate it out from nature.
And
What they do is they make these experiments, chemical experiments, that do create the stuff you're talking about, but they're mostly racemic or all racemic, but they're the same protein. But like you got right and left-handed, right? So they need to be left-handed. So they're all right-handed. So they're racemic, but they're the same protein. And then what they do is they discard that experiment and go, okay, we proved that we can do it. Now we just go and buy it from companies who specialize in separating out those exact molecules out of those living, DNA and living molecules from life, from biological life. And then they buy those molecules. Then they go and take those molecules and they put them into very complex machinery that hook them together. And they do come out as strands of DNA and strands of this and strands of that. But the problem is that they took them from nature. But then they refer back to their papers and they go, well, look, we proved we could do this. But most people aren't smart enough to see and look in, like James Tour says, and look into the chemistry of it, that the ones that they produced were in, like, say, 1% mixed in with so much junk. How would you separate that out? And they were racemic anyway. And in a lot of cases, it was the junk that was in there that made them racemic. So, and they can't even get anywhere near anything in the lab. It's just so pathetic.
Tor was absolutely right. They're completely clueless on the origin of life. So.
Oh, that's Cyril. He was lying. The whole thing was... Tour doesn't know what he's talking about, according to Dave. That's all we heard from him. It's just talking crap about him. And then, he would just quote or cite something that he was probably coached with. I don't know. It's really weird.
Some properties of life, but not all of the criteria are met, and viruses are typically not considered as living. Now, we know that at one point, life had to have come from non-life. After all, there was a point in the previous history of the universe in which there was no life possible because the whole universe was a plasma and there were not even any atoms formed yet. So we know that at some point, life had to have come from non-life, as in non-living constituents, as in atoms.
Hello, God! But he's going to say, hello, magic abiogenesis, or magic molecules, or something. There you go. So, spoiled milk, indeed.
Molecules, and chemicals. But the details for
what you also see there is you see him taking a hypothesis. Can you praise that? Can you pause that, man? I believe. So therefore, there must... Just saying. And that's all I had to say. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, yeah, it was... I think you're kind of delayed there on your side, but you might be lagging there a little bit. But here we go.
Probably. Probably.
How this process happened are still a mystery in modern science. There are plenty of hypotheses under the greater umbrella of origin of life research. For decades, the most popular one, certainly the hypothesis that I learned about in college, was the RNA world hypothesis. But in recent years, many scientists in the field have been moving away from the traditional RNA world hypothesis.
It's funny how he's ditching that that hypothesis, though.
Yeah, like the RNA world hypothesis is to hide behind that because he knows that 99.9% of, actually, that's probably even bigger. Anyway, 99.9% of evolutionists just have like they go cross-eyed when they hear that, and they just take the word of, people like him, or these internet atheists, and the scientists would actually be sitting back there like Lee Cronin, watching these idiots, would be sitting back there and just roaring with laughter, and then going, but being funny that people believe it too.
Yeah.
As I'm sure James Tour is doing right now. So.
Indeed.
And have been seeking other more comprehensive hypotheses to explain how life got started on this planet. Enter my personal favorite of these newer hypotheses, the amyloid world hypothesis, the topic for today's video. Now, before we start, I should mention that this is still very new science. Most of what we're going to be talking about is from just the last decade or so, and there are really only a small handful of scientists working on this area. Origin of life research is typically not very well funded. Not many scientists do it in general. So just specifically talking about the amyloid world hypothesis, there's really only 2 scientists that are publishing on this by name, although there are more scientists working more generally on amyloids. And for today's video, I will be relying mostly on a review article on the amyloid world hypothesis by one of these main key authors, C.P.J. Mori. Link below. But before we get into this, we have to talk about what is an amyloid. Well, an amyloid is a type of protein. Now, we know that proteins are made up of amino acids put together in a sequence. Now, most proteins, like enzymes are proteins with jobs. Most proteins need a specific sequence of amino acids in order to have the right shape to do the right function for their job. But amyloids are fairly independent. They are robust of sequence to a large degree. Now, that is because amyloids are identified based on their shape and the properties that they have in 3-dimensional space. So typically, amyloids will adopt...
Yeah, exactly, with Centurion here. He always says might be, could be, maybe, and then he spins it in a way that, oh yeah, it's proof, or it's evidence, or it is the case. That's so stupid. Yeah, I agree.
What is called a beta-pleated sheet structure. It's called a pleated sheet because it kind of looks like a sheet of paper, but it's not exactly straight and planar. It's got all these kind of crumples on the surface. This pleated sheet structure is much more stable than a typical peptide would be. Now, similar to viruses, amino acid aggregates, like amyloids, can actually function quite similarly to a virus. Specifically, we're talking about prions. Now, prions are not exactly the same thing as amyloids. They are misfolded proteins. So you have a protein that would normally form a certain way to do its enzymatic job. But if it misfolds, it can actually cause somewhat of a chain reaction and cause other proteins of that same type to similarly misfold and kind of spread itself in a similar way that a virus would. And actually, there are many diseases that are prion diseases, as in they're not diseases that are caused by viruses or bacteria, but they're caused by these misfolded proteins called prions. And actually, the most famous one, you may have heard of it, is mad cow disease. These are typically very horrific diseases that you definitely do not want. But the point is that these prions, at least functionally, are doing something very similar to something a bacteria would do. It infests the host, it replicates itself within the host, and it seems to spread that information about its misfolded sequence. And I bring this up to highlight that these protein aggregates, remember, both amyloids and prions are aggregates of amino acids that have this very interesting ability. The prions highlight this well. They can store and spread information. In this case, it was information about this folding of the prions that is being stored and spread to other proteins in the body. It should be noted, actually, that a lot of these unique characteristics of prions actually are due to the amyloid fold, the actual amyloid structures within prions.
I don't care. This to me is such a waste of time. I'm just saying, we'll let the big dogs just tear into them. I don't know. For me, I wish I could destroy it because I don't know it, actually.
I'd let him talk on, man. He's probably about to hang himself with it.
Oh, okay.
Just saying.
I
don't know. I mean, if you don't want to, we could watch something else. That's fine too.
No, we'll watch it because I just wish I could do more commentary on it, but I suck at science. I mean, you know what I mean. I'm not I don't have
if you looked into it, you would understand it. If we could find these papers he keeps alluding to, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Maybe then we could yeah. So I wonder if he posted them in his description or something. I don't know. Probably not.
So a lot of the prion activity can be chalked up to the amyloid structures. So prions can be thought of as a subset of amyloids. But in order to explain how they do this, how amyloids can encode and pass on information in a way that is very similar to genetics, how DNA and RNA store and replicate information. But this is without utilizing any DNA or RNA. This is before genetics. This is only using amino acids and proteins. We have to talk about the structure of amyloids. And the structure of amyloids is absolutely key to how they function into origin of life research. Typically, most peptides are fairly unstable and will degrade. But when you start having peptides that are coming together to form these beta-pleated sheets, which does happen naturally. It has been done in experiment using as close as we can approximate to prebiotic Earth conditions. Amyloids will form naturally in the presence of volcanic gases like carbonyl sulfide, which occur naturally on Earth, specifically at hydrothermal vents. This seems like one of the most likely spots for most hypotheses of abiogenesis, just because you have such a confluence of organic materials, minerals, energy sources. So at these vents...
You know what I say about this? What's up? What's up, Andrew? Good to see you, man. Y'all talking about Grayson? Yes, we're talking about his amyloid fairy tale.
You have the volcanic gases, which can catalyze peptide reactions and form these chains of amino acids. These kinds of conformations, they're much more stable. And what happens here is a sort of positive feedback where new amino acids can be added onto the amyloid, as in onto that sheet can extend, and just new amino acids can be extended onto it, and it can sort of grow organically. So the sheet of paper is getting longer and longer. And the very interesting thing about this process is that not any amino acid is equal in this. Some amino acids are going to be favored as kind of fitting more snugly into that position than others. So it does sort of, the previous amyloid acts as a template for which the sequence of amino acids can be extended. So it's
$2 million super chat for evolutionists. Is information made of physical substance? You know they're going to conflate the medium with the information itself. They always do. But great, that's a great one there. I like that.
Self-replicating its own sequence in a way. And now this is not a perfect process. There's going to be, I mean...
Grayson confused it with hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoidal cream.
No. What? Go back. Run it back, please.
Okay.
To that position than others. So it does sort of, the previous amyloid acts as a template for which the sequence of amino acids can be extended. So it's self-replicating its own sequence in a way. And now this is not a perfect process. There's going to be, I mean, this is way too early to be calling them mutations, but there's going to be...
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's self-replicating, but it's not.
No. It's this over-exaggeration. And, like, don't you think if this was true, this would be published in every single science journal everywhere on frickin' CNN and all? I mean, it would be everywhere, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is it straight up says hypothesis. So, you know, the two papers that he's alluding to, if anything, it's all just hypothesis, and it could have the words probably. And then as long as you leave out the word probably, then it would infer whatever they think it could be. You know, so like it's a dangerous place when you have a hypothesis paper. But
right. And what the hell
Andrew's humming is in the house. All right.
There was some water on the early Earth. How do you know that?
The variation in the amino acid sequence, it's not just going to be replicated with exact fidelity every time. And this is key to evolutionary processes. And one of the key details to note here is that actually the handedness of the amino acid does matter. There are left-handed and there are right-handed conformations of amino acids. And all of life today is left-handed. So it's been a big open question, this chirality problem of handedness. And so this provides a potential solution because the right-handed amino acids would not be added onto a left-handed amyloid. Only the left-handed, it is preferentially picking just the conformations of amino acids that fit kind of like a lock and key into this template structure that the amyloid is building off of. And that's just one of the ways in which amyloids can replicate themselves and information about themselves.
What they do is they make these experiments, chemical experiments, that do create the stuff you're talking about, but they're mostly racemic or all racemic, but they're the same protein. But like you got right and left-handed, right? So they need to be left-handed. So they're all right-handed. So they're racemic, but they're the same protein. And then what they do is they discard that experiment and go, okay, we proved that we can do it. Now we just go and buy it from companies who specialize in separating out those exact molecules out of those living, DNA and living molecules from life, from biological life. And then they buy those molecules. Then they go and take those molecules and they put them into very complex machinery that hook them together. And they do come out as strands of DNA and strands of this and strands of that. But the problem is they took them from nature. But then they refer back to their papers and they go, well, look, we proved we could do this. But most people aren't smart enough to see and look in, like James Tour says, and look into the chemistry of it, that the ones that they produced were in, like, say, 1% mixed in with so much junk. How would you separate that out? And they were racemic anyway. And in a lot of cases, it was the junk that was in there that made them racemic. So, I mean, and they can't even get anywhere near anything in the lab. It's just so pathetic. In one single yeast cell, right, you have 10 to the 79 billionth interactions. within one yeast cell, like every second. And they flow down things called virtual protons. And even though they have a massive amount of interactions, there's only a few ways that they can work perfectly together, right? Very, very few ways. So how does that all come together? I mean, people say a simple cell. What's simple?
It's important to distinguish between the synthesis of amino acids in a laboratory and the origin of life. While laboratory experiments have demonstrated that amino acids and other organic compounds can be synthesized under conditions that supposedly simulate a prebiotic early Earth's environment, it is still an open question exactly how these building blocks assembled themselves into the first living systems. The complexity of life arises from the precise arrangement of these building blocks into complex macromolecules, such as proteins, nucleic acids. These are what are necessary for the function and replication of living systems. The formation of these macromolecules requires a more complex set of reactions and conditions than the synthesis of individual amino acids do. It's easier to go out and find amino acids in nature and say that you found the building blocks and then assume that you can get life from it than if you actually consider what it takes to get a living system. Scientists have proposed several hypotheses for how macromolecules could have formed. One is the self-assembly of organic molecules in prebiotic conditions, or the prebiotic soup, as well as the involvement of catalysts such as clay or clays or metal ions. So they've hypothesized ways that it might have happened. However, the precise mechanisms by which the first living systems arose, that's still a subject of research and debate. In summary, while laboratory experiments have demonstrated that amino acids can be synthesized in certain conditions, it's still an open question and far from being proven or discovered exactly how these building blocks, these amino acids, assembled themselves into the first living systems. So,
in this case, it had to do with the sequence of the amino acids of the amyloid. But there's another mechanism as well, and this is kind of similar to how the prions can replicate their three-dimensional form. Like,
you know what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened here. I'm going to give you guys some science. This is what happened. An abio soup monster. That's what did it. There you go. There you go. That's Grayson coming out of that soup there. Yeah.
I'm halfway through this video and I still don't believe him, man. I don't know.
No way. Like, this stuff is so it's so speculative. Oh, well, this could, this, that, maybe could. Yeah, that's a good point with Centurion.
You want to believe their
the
narrative.
misfolding of the protein.
Right. It's their natural Bible. They're preaching their natural Bible. The goop works in mysterious ways.
Protein can be replicated to other proteins. In this case, the three-dimensional information about the amyloid, which can be affected by the environment, factors in the environment can change the shape of the amyloid, and actually those conformations can then be passed to other amyloids, kind of generations of other amyloids. And there are ways, once an amyloid gets...
Might as well change it to hemorrhoids.
Too long, it can fragment and split in two, and then those can start elongating. Now, you can also have vast networks of these...
Thank you for admitting this, Andrew. It is still a great deal of speculation. We don't have a time machine after all, so we can never be completely sure. Right. Well, even let's say, I'll put it this way, even if you had direct access and you watched it happen, And if you assume your worldview, it would still, you could never come to anything that is true as far as in the future true. You can only have things that are past true and then present true. But it would never remain true, which makes it true. So true is only if it's true in the past, present, and the future, which you can never get. And that is the paradox or the dilemma if you're an atheist.
And Andrew did admit that he would need a time machine to confirm abiogenesis, so
yeah,
that's good.
Of course.
Amyloid fibrils that are all stacked with each other, and they can actually continue to catalyze the formation of more amyloids. So they are self-replicating in this way. They continue to replicate more of themselves like themselves, but with slight variation. And this is the very basis for Darwinian evolution. I mentioned earlier that enzymes are proteins with jobs, with functions. So far, the only function that we've described for amyloid is its self-replicating function. But here's the really interesting and cool part about amyloids. They are multifunctional. One amyloid can accomplish multiple functions, and this has also been demonstrated. So in addition to replicating itself, amyloids can actually catalyze other reactions. Specifically, they can catalyze the formation of their own building blocks. So they can catalyze the formation of the building blocks that they need to add to themselves to continue to elongate and replicate. They can also catalyze ATPase reactions in the presence of metals.
Wow! Wow!
So what did we talk about? That there are lots of metals, minerals, and organic molecules all
in hemorrhoids
amassing at hydrothermal vents. Now, if an amyloid fiber network is present in one of these hydrothermal vents, they can incorporate these organic molecules onto their structure and catalyze
and magically make life. There we go. There's Grayson's mythical is myth. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to repeat what 𝐀𝐜𝐢𝐲𝐶 said. You can believe in your natural myth and your cult or whatever your religion, but just don't put it in schools. That's all.